Welcome to the Retrospect podcast, a show where people come together from different walks of life and discuss a topic from their generation's perspective. My name is Ian, and as always, I'm joined by Jason.
Hello, everyone.
Miranda.
Hello.
And Stoney.
Hello.
Going down the whole list now. Where I feel I have to get right back in the right headspace. I had a little bit of a credit card scare, like a little what I thought was a fraud scare, but just come to find out,
your woman got your credit card.
Yeah,
didn't she? Story of every man's life. Get that woman, get that credit card. It's on, buddy. It's on.
I quote unquote. I signed up for Prime for us, apparently, and so that was what that was. But I'm sorry that it took a whole runaround for me to figure that out. So anyway.
As tragic as that is,
right.
I would like to talk about a more serious, tragic discussion for the day. We're recording this the day before Halloween, and for the second year in a row, we are finding that there is a double-digit inflation on the candy aisle.
Oh, gosh.
Candy and gum prices are up an average of 13% this month compared to last October, with more than a double the 6% increase in all grocery prices since last October. And that's on top of a 14% increase in candy and gum last October.
Wow.
So
people are spending a lot of money right now on Halloween candy.
In the last year or 2 years, there's been a 25% increase or better, almost a 30% increase in candy prices. This is a tragedy.
That's crazy.
That's a lot of money.
Dr. and I, ladies and gentlemen, just so you know, we are addicted to chocolate. And we love our chocolate. One of the things when I met this woman, I was impressed by a number of things. Maybe not the top one thing that I was impressed with, but in the top three was in her refrigerator. She had a whole shelf assigned to just chocolate.
There you go.
Oh,
there you
wow.
go.
Yes.
Hey.
Now, y'all you talking about like
real
milk?
chocolate.
Are you talking about dark chocolate?
Like real
Mostly,
chocolate.
Mostly.
Dark chocolate.
Everyone's
Okay.
got their vices, and hey, you know.
We don't drink,
so
we don't smoke, but we do enjoy
A nice-
an ounce or two of dark chocolate.
I
So
love dark
Same.
chocolate.
And of
It's
course,
good
we
stuff.
like,
I'm into the orange dark chocolate.
the
at the
Volcanica,
moment.
the
Yeah.
You know what I
Volcanica
like?
Kopi Luwak also. We
Yeah.
enjoy that.
yeah.
You know, you talking about all this chocolate. You know, Ian, you got to make some chocolate chip
Yeah, you're
cookies.
right.
That's right.
You
The
know?
holiday
The
season is
chocolate
coming
chip
up,
cookies.
and funny enough you say that, I bought some more equipment to help make that process a little easier. Like I got a special pan and things that I've been.
Oh, you're
kinda
getting all
on the-
professional
Well,
now.
pitter patter, let's get at
I
her.
know. I know. Exactly. I was at the store and I found a pan that kind of, whenever you're making like browned butter and stuff, it's nice to have like a lighter colored pan so you can see when to take it off, because it's a very fine line between browned and burned, and you have to really know that process. And so having a lighter colored pan, you get to see it. So I bought one of those, to like a little small one, to make just specifically for the cookies and things like that. So I got.
You got to be careful
of course.
when you're
Right.
cooking brown butter or a roux.
Yeah.
When you're cooking
Right.
a roux, and
Yeah.
I'm one of those people that I make a roux dark.
Yeah.
I mean, right to the
I
point.
love my roux dark.
Right to the point. I remember when I first moved to Florida, I was getting kind of homesick for some Louisiana food, and I lived right on the water on the Gulf of Mexico in Dunedin, Florida. I mean, you could walk out my back door and throw a rock and hit the Gulf of Mexico. And I lived in a duplex, and one day I was looking, and I looked for some Louisiana spices and some decent sausage, because other
they
outside
don't
of
have it.
Louisiana,
Yeah,
it's
you're not
not
gonna get-
really good.
You're not going to get quality ingredients.
And oddly enough, 2 blocks down the road, I found a little seafood shack from a lady from Louisiana that had retired to Florida, and
Wow.
she imported the sausage and spices and everything from Louisiana, and I was in heaven. And so I was cooking, getting ready to cook my gumbo. I wanted a gumbo. I was just going to do just a simple chicken and sausage gumbo. And I started cooking. And what I do is, before I cook the roux, I chop all my vegetables up and I have them in a pan, because that's part of my process. I cook the roux until it is just to the burning, just right there.
Right.
I pull it off, throw the veggies in it, stop it from cooking, and that cools it down, and then I start making my gumbo. Well, I'm within a minute or two of my roux being ready. And all of a sudden, there's this horrible banging on the door. Bam, 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 bam. Open the door. Open the door. And I'm like, oh, crap. What do I do? Open the door. Dunedin Fire Department. Open the door. Open the door. And I'm like, oh, man. Well, you can't stop stirring the roux at this point. Because if you stop and walk away from it, you're going to burn it.
Right.
Yep.
So basically, I'm in my socks, shorts, and a shirt, and I'm stirring this roux. And so I have to pick it up, still stirring it, walk over to the door, try to unlock the door and open the door with people beating on it, threatening to tear it, knock it off. And I'm stirring it. Finally get it open. I says, come on with me, come on. And I get back to the stove and I dump the veggies in it. And I said, what do y'all want?
Right.
Your neighbor thought your place was on fire because I had gotten it up to the point where it smelled and there's a little bit of smoke and it's just perfectly almost burnt. And I'm cooking and I tell them, what's going on. And it was the chief, the assistant chief, and one or two of the firemen.
Wow.
And that was the whole fire department for the whole city.
Right.
And it was a Saturday. And so we're talking and I'm continuing to stir it or, I don't want it to burn. And I saw the chief look at his other guys and they shook their head, yes. And he turned back to me and he says, well, Mr. Stoney, exactly how long does it take to cook a gumbo? And I says, well, I guess 5 to 6 hours I'll be done. Why? And he says, well, we're going to have to come back then and make sure there's no burning embers in there. Those guys showed up with their little bowls and their spoons.
They
and
were
knocked on
hungry.
those. So I fed them, and I think I fed them every Saturday for the next 6 months. I would either go there and bring it to them or they come back. But you have to, when you want to cook something that precise, you got to have what you need
whenever
to do
you
that.
start whenever you cook again, I want to come over and eat.
Well, it's like because of the accident, without being able to taste or smell. I got some things down pat that I can do. I cooked I cooked a pork shoulder for Miranda and I, and the pork, she said it tasted great. It was juicy. It was tender. It was everything. I had a little bit left over. I said, well, let me cook a vegetable soup. So I put everything together. Miranda's out running with her mom or doing something, and I got to the point where I was like, I don't know if it's good or not. Uh-oh. So I called like 2 or 3 friends. Are y'all near Central? Can you come by and taste this, please? Because I don't know if it tastes good or not. I can't taste it. I don't know if I need to add a little more salt or a little pepper or whatever because I just can't taste now. And that is so frustrating right now to be at that point where the doctors and the neurologists and the surgeons say that when I hit the back of my head, it sloshed my brain around to where it just severed those nerves.
Oof.
Wow.
They're just done. And it may or may not ever come back.
That's scary, man.
And so now they've prescribed, which waiting for workman's comp to give all their approvals, they've subscribed. What is that? The steroid, the nasal steroids. And then they said if that doesn't work, then they're going to have to inject me in my brain with some steroids. I'm like, oh wow. Good Lord Jesus, have mercy.
Making my skin crawl.
Yeah.
And but it's just
speaking of crawling,
oh no.
Why don't we get on to today's topic?
Oh, yeah.
Wow. I was about to say, we probably need to jump on that.
We do.
I had a good story, and y'all are hating like that.
No.
I see how it is.
Don't lump me in. I'm not saying nothing. It was a great story.
Wow.
So what is today? What are we talking about today?
Well, I think we were talking about the EV cars, the electric vehicles, and is it a scam or are they worth having?
I think I know one person that has one.
Really?
I do.
There's a whole bunch in the city now. Because I think the infrastructure is getting a little bit better. I wouldn't say.
Yes, there's a lot of massive diesel generators with charging stations right next to them.
Right.
Yes.
I have noticed, though, some shopping centers, I'm starting to see EV charging stations starting to be put in, and I still think, though, the infrastructure is not quite built out enough for them. I mean, I've got nothing personal against electric vehicles. I mean, if somebody wants an electric car, fine. But I still think there's some limitations with them, though.
Well, there's a lot of limitations, and the scam is that they're saving the environment, and they're not. You will use 10 to 20 times more of the damage to the environment creating the electric vehicle than you will saving it from not using gasoline. Just in the lithium, the cobalt, just the mining of these things, you're using child labor.
Yep.
And
Slave labor.
Labor, and you're paying China.
Yep. Because that's where most of it's coming out of.
Most of it's coming from China. So we're paying our enemy for our own vehicles. And then on top of that, the damage that the mining and the manufacturing of this electric vehicle does, you'll never make it back up.
Right.
When you own the vehicle and you're using, because what are you using to charge the vehicle?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I love the picture with the big diesel generators on the EV station, the EV charging station, but you're using coal and everything else to charge the vehicle.
Well, until you can find an alternative way of producing energy, you're going to have to use fossil fuels to generate that. I mean, it's just, the only thing I can see that would be a game changer if somehow we can perfect fusion. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, that would then do away with the need for fossil fuels.
See, here's the thing with that is we have nuclear power, which is proven to be safe. And if you took from the very first nuclear plant till today, and you took the cylinders, and let's say took a football field from 10 yards on one side of the goal line to 10 yards on the other side of the goal line. Let's say you stacked all of the nuclear waste end to end, straight up and down. How many times would you fill that football field up?
I have no idea.
You wouldn't. It wouldn't barely even make it to the 35-yard line, the first 35-yard line.
You talking about like the fuel rods?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the problem is...
Okay, so you really don't have as much nuclear waste as everybody wants you to believe you do because they don't believe in using that power.
Right.
Okay, because they want to do something else. So you would not even fill up half a football field from every plant in America. If you took all of that waste and put it end to end, put the rods end to end, you would not make it to the 35-yard line.
You know, that you were talking about China and all that stuff coming out of China. To me, I find this so of just where this country has kind of gone and how we've just kind of given up on manufacturing. Mm-hmm. According to the Department of Energy, the first successful electric car in the United States
was the
1890.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It was an invention by William Morrison. It had a top speed of 14 miles per hour.
Yeah.
It could hold up to 6 people.
But it got over 250 miles, too.
It said, but unfortunately, the innovation by Henry Ford dealt a huge blow to and basically all electric vehicles disappeared by 1935. Mm-hmm. So, but the EV industry is a lot of money. I'm showing right now. I saw pulled a number of $287.36 billion.
Right.
But there's a lot of money going into it, and there's a lot of subsidies involved. I read somewhere that the average between what the manufacturers get and what the eventual car owners get, there's about $50,000 worth of subsidies wrapped up into every single car. Whereas if all of us were given $50,000 worth of subsidies, we could go buy a heck of a lot of nice cars. You know, so
yeah, I think
it gives us a false sense of that, you know, that there's this big industry. And I think that as we discuss things today, we'll find out that a lot of the hope and the promise that people had for electric cars has not come to fruition because a lot of these companies are pulling out or scaling down what their ambitions were. And I've got some numbers here. Let me find it real quick. But, you know, it's... You have to realize, do you trust the government? Do you trust the government when they say that, you know, this is our next greatest hope, you know, is to have all these electric cars? Because because they've been wrong before. Remember when they told us we all needed to move to diesels because diesel was clean, and then we found out there was different technologies put on half of the diesel cars which modified their emissions. It wasn't so clean after all.
Right.
I think Volkswagen got hugely slapped for their falsifying of numbers on their little diesel engines.
Ford is pausing its $12 billion investment in electric vehicles.
Right.
GM abandoned its goal of 400,000 EVs. Honda and GM scrapped their joint plan to develop cheap EVs. Ford will lose $4.5 billion on EVs. It shows that automakers are concerned about the viability of the market for battery-powered cars. You know, if you've got all these major players here in the United States scaling down or pulling out of the industry, there's a reason for that. Either the government financing is drying up or the market is drying up, or they don't anticipate that market to be there. And I think that says a lot because money talks.
Well, I think that's you brought up a good point with the problem is these electric vehicles. I think the price point it's catering right now to a high-end market. I think I saw something that was like 53,000 was the average cost of an electric vehicle.
Well, the average EV car is a minimum of $20,000 more than
a
gasoline car.
Yeah.
And then what you have to think about is okay, that's not where it stops. Okay. And they're running into a problem with the batteries.
Yep.
And it costs around $24,000 to $26,000 to change the batteries in a Tesla. Okay, well, if that happens within 5 to 6 years, maybe the warranty covers it. But if it's 6 or 7 years, you have to pay for that.
Right.
And how often are they being changed? People buy these cars and finding out that they've got a $24,000 bill every 8 to 10 years.
Well, that's affecting the resale market.
So how is that even comparable to helping you out when you have all of this back? Okay, now we're talking about the batteries again. Now we're talking about child labor and child slavery, mining the stuff that you need for these batteries, and they're not even lasting 10 years?
Yeah, I think what's happening is people are wanting these electric vehicles. They want these miles that the range a car can drive on one charge to go at least 400 to 500 miles.
And they don't do that.
And the problem is, I think that's where they're running into the problem is those scales are just not working out.
I think a big thing too is that they can't get the cost down. That's the hard part. Is that even the cheaper ones, like they're having to cut so many corners that they start to lose features and they start to lose things that, like, again, you can buy a gasoline vehicle for significantly less that has, the same kind of feature set, if not a little bit more sometimes. That's the hard part that I've heard, at least from friends and from people that are in this kind of market, is that's been the big problem, is it's just too expensive to make them. And then even whenever they do make quote unquote more affordable ones, I mean, it's
it says,
52%
of U.S. consumers identified the cost as their main concern regarding battery electric vehicles.
Right.
And a close 48% respondents mentioned the driving range.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that goes back into the infrastructure's not. I have said this all along, which I found so odd, that why they pushed electric vehicles instead of hybrid vehicles, which I think is a superior technology.
Right.
Would you like to know?
Please.
I have an opinion on that.
Yes.
With the current administration and what they're trying to push the American citizen to do is a 15-minute city. When you have a completely electric car, they can control your car. They can control where you go. They can control how far you go. If you have a gasoline or a hybrid engine, the government has zero control over it. Yeah. What they proved in Denver when they went to they had a whole town, which they said, this is going to be great. We're going to give you these wonderful little controllers for your air conditioner and your electricity, and it's going to help you, and it's going to save you so much money. And then all of a sudden, the U.S. government controlled that you couldn't drop your air conditioner below 78 degrees. Okay, well, wait a minute. I want to make mine 72. You can't do that. So what this is to me is this is the government coming in and saying, we're going to control you. Maui, other cities that are being prepped for 15-minute cities, which means that middle-class people or less, poor people, middle class, upper middle class, if you aren't the ultra wealthy, you are only going to be able to travel 15 minutes.
Right.
They don't want you going anywhere. There's even regulations coming up where you can't travel to Spain. You're only going, as a human being, you're only going to be able to travel so many miles a year. So if you have an electric vehicle, they're going to be able to travel. They're going to be able to control where you travel.
So is a car, are you saying these electric cars have some sort of modem in it?
They will.
I mean, they
currently
do
have
to a certain
modems
extent. Now,
now?
what you have to do is, and the Biden administration just passed a bill that says every vehicle now has to have a government shutoff on it.
A lot of Teslas, or I think every Tesla so far, can receive updates.
Okay.
Just so it has,
there's a modem in it.
It has Wi-Fi inside
Okay.
the vehicle, which is how you can connect your phone to it to unlock your vehicle and stuff.
Right.
But that's the big thing because of all the cameras that are inside of it, it needs to be able to have total connectivity, which can be a deficit as well. Because I think that does allow Tesla to make changes.
I found this an interesting thing, which really just kind of blew my mind. Manufacturers can construct 17 hybrid batteries with the materials necessary to make one electric vehicle battery.
Oh, wow.
17.
That's
And
crazy.
I thought we were here trying to save the planet.
Right.
Well, it's
not about saving the planet.
That is the pretty little package that it's wrapped up in, but that's not real. You know, you always have to look at what's happened elsewhere in the world to kind of get an idea of what's happening to us, because we're not always the forerunners in things. And right now, China has sold the most EVs of any other country in the world. They've got 5 times the amount that America does. But now in China, you need a minimum social credit score of 550 to charge your electric vehicle. So is that what's coming?
That is exactly what's coming. That's how they're going to control where you go, how far you go, and when you go. I mean, think about this. Okay, California just passed a law that says, I think it's by 2030 or 2035, you can no longer purchase a gas-powered vehicle in the state of California.
I saw that.
Okay, so let's think about that. So this year, this is 2023, how many times did they have rolling blackouts in California where they said, okay, you can't charge your car during the day and you can't charge your car during these days because
you can't run your air conditioner, you can't cut your grass, like all these different things.
Because their infrastructure, their electric infrastructure can't handle the power. But now all of a sudden you're saying all the vehicles now have to be electric. Now we've dropped, what is it, baby, when we went to Las Vegas and with the Hoover Dam and Lake what behind it?
Lake Mead.
Lake Mead is at the lowest point that it's ever been because they've had to increase the water flow out of it just to help supply California with electricity. So you're going to kill Las Vegas, and they're not going to have any drinking water, any water that they need to help supply California with electricity. Please tell me how that's going to work.
I do think that, to be devil's advocate here a little bit, is that I think that I'm not saying that I'm not saying that decision was a smart decision or was the best decision, but I do think to help push us forward, you do have to make some pretty radical decisions and pretty big calls, and I think that's kind of what one of those was trying to be, was that they're trying to get a more robust power grid and probably move us forward in electric vehicle technology. And so having a big city like Los Angeles make a hard stance on you can't buy a petroleum vehicle here or a petrol vehicle here.
Right.
I think it is forcing people like Chevy and Ford and other big manufacturers to have to innovate, because if they don't, they're going to get left out. And a large percentage of the population is in Los Angeles. Again, I'm not saying it was a smart decision. I'm just saying, I think I see...
The problem to me, though, is that they're trying to wrap this up in an eco-warrior type of package.
Right.
And they're trying to make everybody have the warm fuzzies that, that they can be all woke. because they're driving an electric vehicle and they can feel superior to everybody else. But the sad fact is here in the end of 2023, the percentage of Americans that are behind on their car loan has hit a 3-decade high. And what is our administration's response or solution to this is they want to mandate $60,000 electric vehicles for everybody.
Right.
So if we've got the highest amount of people defaulting on their auto loans of any time in the past 30 years, why would anybody think it's a good idea to mandate something that is going to cost them more money and take transportation out of more families' hands? This isn't about environmentalism, because when you start looking at the hard data about what goes into the batteries, and people don't realize when you buy your $60,000 EV, it doesn't end there. You have to buy a $600 special unit to get installed at your house, and it's another $1,200 to $2,500 to get that power station put on your house. The people that can buy these electric vehicles are wealthy people that it's a second or a third vehicle. Because if an electric vehicle is your primary and your sole vehicle, you are going to have an unreliable vehicle. Because you just look at, despite the challenges to the power grid, and I've got some really interesting statistics about the power grid and just how precarious the American power grid is right now. There is no way we can handle all of these electric vehicles coming online.
What is the worst state in the United States for the power grid?
Believe it or not, Louisiana.
Really?
Yes. Louisiana has the worst power grid infrastructure of any state in America, hands down. There is a group called, there's the NERC map, NERC, and it showed the Mid-Continent Independent System Operator, MISO, states that are Louisiana, Arkansas, Michigan, Wisconsin, Iowa, Minnesota, Illinois, and Indiana all have either partly or all are either partly or entirely at risk for blackouts and complete failure.
No wonder why there have been so many power outages lately.
This is why Demco gives it to us.
So I have a question. I want to touch on something Ian said that I really, really loved and appreciated, is why aren't we looking for new technologies? Okay. Hey, you know what? I'm all for new technologies. I'm all for saving the environment. I don't believe the CO stuff. I don't believe that. It's bullshit. It's a proven fact that the CO that cars are producing aren't even close to affecting the. It's not even true.
It's not even
It's
a percentage
not even
of
true.
fraction
Hold
of
on,
what
I'm
China's
going
putting
somewhere.
out.
Okay, I'm going somewhere with this. Okay, so why aren't we looking at that? First off, we're sitting on the Tuscaloosa Trend. It's the largest oil reserve in the world. If America stopped buying oil from our enemies in the Middle East, just like we're buying lithium and cobalt from our enemy in China, let's just say we stopped buying oil from the Middle East and only took it out of the Tuscaloosa Trend. How long would that last America in what we use today and the predictable future of what we need? How long would that last?
I would say, what, about a century?
250 years. So if we can't find an alternative fuel source in 250 years and pay our people money and keep our money in our own country, the problem is not that we're trying to save the environment. So if we're looking for an alternative fuel source or alternative technologies, I would like to bring Stanley Mayer to the table. Oh, wait, I can't. I'm sorry. He was assassinated in 1975 because he invented the water-powered cell car.
He's probably using some sort of with hydrogen.
Okay.
That's probably what he was using.
So they took his patents and they killed him. So I can't bring him to the podcast. I'm sorry, because we really don't want alternative technologies.
Well, we've learned from just some of our topics in past podcasts about what
it's about control.
What people are willing to do to ensure that they stay in power and make their money. But I'm telling you, the EV market, I mean, we say all this, but it's projected to grow from what I said, 246.7 to 1.3 trillion in 2028.
I think that they're revising that, though. I think that's why all those companies are pulling out, because they are not necessarily telling the media that, we don't think it's going to be as robust as what we anticipated. But when you see the big automakers folding up. China's biggest EV company closed. It's a $165 billion company, and it's shuttered and up for sale.
Yep.
So it tells you kind of the writing is on the wall that this was something that they tried to push on everybody. And
but was it? I mean, I kind of agree with Ian to a degree. About sometimes you got to make radical to kind of move people forward, and I get that. That's why I don't understand the hybrid. Why was that not really pushed? Because to me, I think that's a superior car to both gasoline and electric.
I hate to be a broken record because they can't control it.
I think a lot of things too is like I think it's because they're trying to move away from it. I think the big thing is they're trying to move away from gasoline altogether, because again, it's one of those things where it's a finite resource, and it's also they started this whole discussion about bettering the environment, and so I think that's what lends itself to being more. Even though we've learned now that of course it's not like it's all super great for the environment to be all electric, but I think a lot of it is too that I think they're trying to make radical decisions to help push people forward in technology.
Yeah, I think it's a proven fact that it's worse for the environment to
Right.
be all electric.
And I think that's why the people are starting to back out too. And I think that's why it's a little bit weird, because I think that they're realizing that the infrastructure isn't there, and it also isn't as good for the environment as it was. So I think there was this trend of like, of course, it was everyone was on board, everyone has this certain mindset, and then all of a sudden now that facts are coming out and people are changing their mind and stuff, I still think that the EV market is going to be expanding a lot more. I just think that if a manufacturer can get that price point of like a brand new EV that has just standard safety features down to like 30,000,
right? That's
lower,
exactly what I'm thinking.
I think that we could be in a very different discussion.
But when your batteries cost $24,000, how are you going to get a car down to $30,000?
They're saying battery production is going to drop as far as the price that it's going to,
Is it?
Yeah.
Because who controls that? China, our enemy. Do you really think China's going to let that happen?
Well, that's why I believe Tesla has survived and have kind of, because they've worked through all those supply chain issues.
Yeah.
All these other companies, they kind of got into the game later. Basically Tesla did all the pioneering work.
Right.
So they've kind of got all their stuff together and got everything set up where they survived that initial that level of uncertainty.
Let's go there. I like that. Let's go there. Let's say it's 2050 and we're 75% or better vehicles in America are all electric, and China shuts off the cobalt and lithium plants.
Well, I mean,
now what do you do?
Well, that goes
No,
back.
there's no what. What do you do now? Now they got you by the balls, and there's nothing you can do.
There's nothing you could do. But, I mean, that taps into even a broader question that there's a lot of manufacturing that we depend on China. I mean, with medicines and everything else. So, I mean, if they shut down production, everybody's going to be in trouble unless we start doing something different.
What do they have in them? What do they have in them? Oh, yeah, they have chips. And now China wants to take over Taiwan, which produces 95%
of the silicon
of the chips and 100% of the super chips in the world. Now what do you do?
I think that human beings will always find a way. And if there's money involved in it, and if there's probably the betterment of human beings, I think that someone either here or somewhere elsewhere will find a way. I'm not saying I know who that is or what's going to happen, but I don't think it's going to be like a overnight. I mean, there could be, but I don't think China's going to do an overnight, like all of a sudden, like, psych, you're not going to have any more stuff. And if they do, I think that we will find an alternative. Or we'll just go back to gasoline vehicles.
They've already said that Russia, China, and Iran put out on Wednesday that they can and will invade America. Okay, so that's the new axis of evil. They said they can and will invade America. So why is it so far-fetched to think that they cut off our supply of things that we need?
Well, I mean they can, but I don't think it's going to put us in that big of a
Today it won't,
No,
because
no,
we
you're right.
got
You're right.
95% of our vehicles are still gas powered. But in
Right.
2050, when maybe that number changes, then what do you do?
Well, they say China will surpass the United States by 2050
Mm-hmm.
as far as the biggest economy in the world.
The only
They're going
thing,
to have to roll back how many cars, EVs, that they push on our market
Sure.
in the first place, because the underlying reality is that the U.S. electric grid and infrastructure cannot handle them.
Mhm.
And, you know, so that is going to be the biggest mitigating factor as far as rollout is concerned right now, from that perspective, from that global governmental perspective. They can't. If they're having blackouts and brownouts with people using their air conditioners,
Right.
what's going to happen when you have 18 million people in every state plugging in their car each
Right.
night? You know, it's just you're not going to be able to allow to have lights on in your house at night because everybody's EVs are charging. You know, it's not going to happen. But what I think that a lot of people don't realize is it's not just the initial cost, and it's not just the battery cost of these EVs that are a lot higher. When you go to get car insurance, you know, and this, you know, Stoney and I was looking at this earlier today. It's absolutely stunning what people are paying for car insurance.
Yeah.
So much so that Tesla had to come up with its own insurance policies for its owners, which is available in 12 states, might I add. Because with Tesla, the average owner is paying about $2,030 annually if they were living in Texas for their electric vehicle. But if they had that same electric vehicle in Texas and they went to Geico, they're paying $6,500 plus for car insurance. So you don't expect, you know, when the average American is paying about $136 a month for their auto insurance, what's it going to be now when it's almost $400 because you've got an EV? You know, are you prepared for that cost because you think, oh, I'm saving so much on gas? Well, not really, because your electric bill is now through the roof. And what happens when, because all of our roads are paid for with gas taxes,
Yeah.
Louisiana
Right.
roads are already falling apart. What happens when that revenue shuts down? They're going to find a new way to tax you,
Yeah.
and it's going to be on your electric bill.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Well, I mean, we're talking about batteries. Y'all mentioned that. Did y'all see this? I found this because U.S. Energy Information Administration, and it said they project the actual battery costs will be 51 to 56% lower by 2050.
There's no way.
That's what it says. It says they expect by 2050 the retail equivalent of between $105 per kilowatt hour to $118 per kilowatt hour by 2050. So I think the technology is just going to get perfected. I really do. I mean, that's what's happened with every other technology. It's gotten smaller.
right.
It's
Yeah.
gotten better.
Well, I think that especially
I mean, let's look at our cell phones.
because there's going to be limitations and stuff. I think that especially in a place like Los Angeles, I think it's going to try and force people into perfecting and bettering what we already have. But like I know there are already people. I know there's someone on YouTube I watched recently who has a Tesla has solar panel shingles. And you can put
Mhm.
you
I've
can
seen
change your
those.
whole
Right.
roof
Yeah.
over to solar
Seen those.
panel shingles. And he's like, I don't pay for electricity because of the area I live in. And in fact, like that also charges my vehicle. So I'm like, I'm starting to think about that. I'm not like for myself, but like think about that for the future. Like what happens if that was to, significantly cut the cost? And of course, we're,
But we all don't live in LA.
You're right,
We,
you're right.
we live in the
Yeah.
other LA.
yeah.
Where it can rain for 4 months straight.
Mhm.
And if you
Yep.
don't have, if you're not getting 8 hours of sunlight a day, your solar vehicle is not going to go too
And
far.
they've proven that you're not making that much on your electricity.
Yeah.
You're not going to recover that much. But
Right.
what I would like to say
he
is
gave just to be again devil's advocate. He gave a whole breakdown, and he was actually making a pretty good amount off of it. So
part of this liberal agenda is, and I don't know if everybody knows this, but they're trying to pass a law now in America that everybody must now buy a snowblower. Everybody in America is going to have to buy a snowblower.
Everybody in America has to buy a snow blower.
Yes.
Talking about those like portable ones you push?
Yes, where you push and you blow
Right.
the snow off your sidewalk.
And why is that?
Exactly the point of an electric vehicle. Everybody doesn't need an electric vehicle or want one. So what's the point of trying to make everybody buy a snowblower? And what's the point of everybody having to buy an electric vehicle when you don't want one? This is still America.
Well, I believe that's true. I mean,
And
I
if
believe
you
the
want
market,
one, I'm all for it. If you want an electric vehicle, go grab it. Enjoy your life with your electric vehicle. But not everybody. What do you think that's going to do to the trucking industry?
no, it's going to destroy it.
Okay.
I
What do
mean,
you
I
think
don't-
that's going to
I
do
don't
for the
know. You mean
railroad
like-
industry?
You mean like 18-wheeler trucking? Because
Yeah.
Tesla has already, has been
And they're
working
not
on.
working.
I mean, okay.
Well,
but-
to me, if I have no problems with electric vehicles, if it's something that you drive within town, within the town you live, then I think they work because you don't have to deal with the mileage issue and all that.
Yeah, your
And
15-minute cities again.
Yeah, but if you have to travel any distance, I would worry
Yeah.
with having an electric vehicle. I
Well,
just would.
they took Tesla and they showed people trying to travel the country with a Tesla. Okay, so when they run out of electricity, they send the Tesla the technician with a generator, a gas-powered generator in the back of the gas-powered Tesla van to charge the electric vehicle. Really?
Well,
Come
as I
on.
said, like
Come
I'm a
on.
firm believer that I really, and you say control, you're probably right. It probably is the way that we're going right now. There's this desire to control everything.
Yes.
I still think the hybrid vehicle is a superior vehicle.
I do too. I do too, because when you think about it, what it does is it takes a little bit of this,
Right.
applies it to this, and you get what you need. And you save money, and you're actually making an impact on the environment.
It makes, to me, technology the way it's designed.
Mm-hmm.
Technology is neutral. It's how we use it.
Yes, I love
is
that. That's amazing.
we have to understand all these things is how human beings choose to utilize this stuff. And that's why I think the hybrid vehicle is a superior, because you have electricity, you've got gas, and now you can push the mileage. If they really wanted to kind of perfect this, I mean, you can get a car that can go 1,000 miles or even longer.
Or even in
You
the,
know, I mean-
the 60s and 70s, the guy who invented the carburetor, they got 150 miles to the gallon. Oh, I'm sorry. They killed him too. 150 mile to the gallon carburetor using regular gasoline.
Somebody has that patent.
Yeah, they're not going to use it. Again, that's the oil and petroleum industry saying that's not good.
Well, see, then that goes back. Here we have now the oil and gas industry. They have their nefarious.
I mean, that's the whole reason we haven't done nuclear power is because the oil and gas
industry,
and
yes.
gas industry doesn't want you to do that.
They came out with this great propaganda program that says nuclear power is so bad for you that
We've been
we
talking
can't
about
have
that since
Nikola Tesla wanted to give the world free energy.
free energy. Yep.
We've been talking about that since Chernobyl. That nuclear power is a bad thing, but that's not the case. But the problem is that, again, everyone with the money and the power, of course, doesn't want.
Well,
to
when
say
nuclear
that,
works
but-
well, it works really well.
Right.
But when nuclear doesn't work well, you get 3 Mile Island and you get Chernobyl and you get,
Right.
these other kinds of things. And that's a risk that some people just don't want to take, whereas other countries have, fully adapted to nuclear power. I think France might be one of them. And they're doing fine with it. But at the end of the day, right now we've got a bunch of, very, the woke population want to enforce all these electric vehicles on people because they think that gas is bad. But at the end of the day, every electric vehicle is still a coal-powered vehicle because that's where, unless you live in New York State and you're getting hydroelectric electricity
Right.
from Niagara Falls, you have coal is the source of the electricity that's running through your house. And so how is coal mining, which is supposed to be bad, any less bad than the cobalt mining or the zinc mining or any of these other things? People are cherry picking what negative things that they want to have out
At least
there.
in America, we're not using child labor in our coal
I
mines.
mean, anytime you've got to dig in the earth, I mean, it's what it is.
Well, I would like everybody to remember the same group of people that is pushing these EV cars and things like that are the same group of people that said, why don't we travel to the sun? Because it's too hot. Well, if we went at night, it wouldn't be as hot. This is the same group of people with that mentality.
Yeah.
Okay, because they don't
AOC like that.
Okay. All right. So, I mean, if you aren't willing to do your research, should you be opening your mouth? If you do your research on these EV vehicles, look, and I'm not opposed to an electric vehicle. What I'm opposed is to you imposing it on the whole country for your lack of education.
Well, because you have rich people who can afford to have these EVs. They're the ones that are making these policies because to them, it's like, hey, I've got a Tesla. It's just fine. But for the average Joe that, like last week when we were talking about people can't afford to do things.
How you think you're going to be able to afford to do it now?
If we have 50% of families that have kids in diapers can't afford their diapers, how are we going to afford electric cars? How are we going to do that? How are we going to afford 4 times the insurance costs? One of the things that people don't realize, the insurance costs on these cars are more because if you get into a car accident, they're a write-off. They're not fixing these cars because 1, there's a shortage of parts. 2, the batteries, you can't fix the batteries. You can't recycle the batteries. They're toast. You got to replace the whole car. And when I was doing my research, I found that a couple of, the big car writers, they refer to electric cars as tin can coffins because they're all very poorly made. They're not robust. If you get into an accident with it, it's a death trap. And so, in America, where we like our big vehicles, we've got big families. We tow stuff. There's not a single electric car right now
that can tow
anything, even though they're heavier than most cars because their batteries are heavy, but they all have very poor storage. So you can't there's not an electric car that you can put your 4 or 5 kids in. There's not one that you can put your St. Bernard in. There's not one that you can really load up with, 3 weeks worth of groceries because none of them tick all the boxes on what Americans look for in vehicles.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I would disagree with some of that, but I mean, that's just a personal thing. But
what would you disagree with?
I mean, there are some very, very big EVs out there that can hold a lot of stuff.
Not family. There's not a single.
I mean, the Model Y. The Model Y is huge. Like it can fit a whole. It has a whole.
And how much is that? How many families can afford?
I mean, no one can.
Yeah, exactly.
You're right. That's what I'm saying.
That's not acceptable for.
There is not an EV minivan for the average soccer mom.
Right.
There is, it's just like there is not an EV pickup truck that the average working Joe can take and go
I misunderstood
onto the,
whenever you said that there. I thought you were saying they don't exist, and I was
they really don't in a practical way because
they do exist, but you just can't afford them. Is the thing.
Well, then they don't exist. If they don't exist to where Miranda and I can afford it, trust me, they don't exist.
Jason,
but when you have to think about it, also is that now that they're pricing it out and they're putting it out, normal people can't use it. So what they're going to have to do is now they're going to have to tax you more so that they can have a better mass transit in the cities. Again, back to the 15-minute cities and the control. Okay, so now you're going to get the little chip in your hand, and that's how you're going to have to use the local electric or propane bus or whatever, the train or whatever. Oh, I'm sorry, your credit score is not high enough to get on the train today. Go back home and do something to improve your credit score.
Now
social score.
Credit,
yeah. And so now what do you do? Now you can't afford the vehicle. Now you can't afford to get on the mass transit. Now you can't. Now what do you do?
Well, I think, just my opinion on this. I would think if it would ever get to that level, I just think there would be an uprising.
We're getting to that level.
I think there would be an uprising. I mean, because you can't. I mean, unless something just something crazy happens where people would be willing to go along with that. Now, we say all these things, but maybe people would be willing by that time to do this stuff because they've been conditioned.
That's the point. That's what they're doing.
So, I mean,
how many times even on this podcast have we talked about we're indoctrinating our kids in our federal school system?
But the whole apparatus maybe get to a point where you can't do you would have to just comply. Otherwise, you couldn't live. I mean, you'd have to just go off and live off in the wilderness
what is
somewhere.
Compliance? Control.
Power.
It's control.
Now, we've all seen the propaganda, and when we've all been doing our research for this, and you will see the reports that say that these batteries are good for 15 to 20 years, but if you actually use any of the fast charging, that drops to 8.
Right.
But I would hazard everybody, because we talk about how fast technology changes, there's 4 of these cell phones sitting on the table here that have more computing technology than what we took when Apollo landed on the
That's
moon.
right.
But every single one of us knows within 2 years, our cell phones are almost bricked because our batteries are toast from us fast charging them.
Especially when Apple does an update on it and makes the battery go faster so that you'll have to buy another Apple phone.
So what's going to happen with all these electric vehicles?
Exactly.
Just to prove my point a little bit, the price of a Model Y, the Performance Edition, has gone down enough where it is actually the same price as a brand new Dodge Durango, which is a 4-door minivan equivalent vehicle. They're both $41,000. I mean, still expensive, but I mean,
But
that is
it's not a dollar for dollar comparison.
You're right.
When the insurance is 4 to 6 times higher, and when it's like when you look at all the different costs, there was a British study, and I can find it here.
And then 8 years later, you can add another $24,000 to that to add some more batteries to it.
They've got to make money somewhere. They have to
Right.
make money somewhere. And the truth about electric vehicles is coming to light. They're not as green as they were promised. They're not as efficient as they were promised. They're not as affordable as they were promised. Meanwhile, the politicians, they want to force them in on everybody. When I was looking at one of the things out of England, they found that the true cost of fueling an electric vehicle, according to Disclosed TV, is close to $17.33 a gallon.
It's a lot of money.
That's a lot of money. That's not saving anybody anything. And it's there is no such thing as a zero.
Well, they
emissions car.
hide the cost.
Yes.
It's
They don't
not
tell
like
people.
You want to know what else is hidden? Joe Biden, his family owns 5% of the largest cobalt factory in China.
well, that's probably that Hunter stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
That's hidden too. I
Yeah.
like that. Oh, why do we need to go to all electric vehicles? Oh, so Joe Biden and his crime family can make all the money they need to.
Well, it's another topic altogether with that. But I mean, I think the EV vehicle is here to stay. I don't think it's going anywhere. I think the market will force a correction. I think once costs get down where these cars are just as the same, you look at this car is 28,000 and that car is 28,000. What do you go with at that point in time?
Right,
Here's
and it
my
depends on
problem.
what you want to spend your money on.
I agree.
Do you want to spend money on
I was
oil
gonna say
changes
exactly
and on
the same
gas?
thing. Yep.
And instead of all that, you can just spend it on brakes and other things like that, and other minor maintenances.
But there's
tires and
maintenance
stuff.
on the electric vehicles too.
I mean, very little as opposed to like a traditional vehicle.
If you have,
But
Unless you divide that $24,000.
again, I don't know where you're getting that from. I've had friends that have had.
I have friends
vehicles.
that just had
That
to
I've never-
replace his
I've
battery in
never-
his Tesla, and it cost him $24,000.
And I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah.
And I think specifically in a city like Los Angeles where there is so much traffic as well, I think it's going to be beneficial to have for them at least. They may see a better quality of air, I would imagine.
but
I'm not-
96% of Americans don't live
You're right.
in one of the big 4
but
cities in the United States.
Are you guys saying that the government is going to try and force all of us for electric
Yeah.
vehicles?
Yes,
because
yes.
I
that
think
is
it's
their
just,
plan.
It's just
That's-
Los Angeles.
No.
It's all of
Okay.
California right
I
now.
know,
Okay,
I know.
so you start in California,
Right.
you start in New York, and
Right.
now everybody's going to have it.
This is like from the Biden administration. They're trying to.
I would like to read up on
variety
that
of different
because
policies.
I haven't heard anything about
You have to
that.
look at it like this. Anytime the government forces you to do something, I can guarantee you it's not a good thing. Forcing you to have an EV car, forcing you to take the vaccine. Let's ask the Native Americans about the time they were asked to give up their guns. Oh, I'm sorry. They were killed to give up their guns if they didn't. Anytime the U.S. government comes and forces you to do something, it's not for your benefit. It's for their benefit. And
But
I don't mind electric vehicles until you force it on me.
Right.
And it's not the matter of it's an electric vehicle. It's the matter that it's wrapped up in this little package that says it's environmentally friendly when it's not. 2.2 million tons of water is used to produce 1 ton of lithium.
Mm-hmm.
We have a global water shortage going on. And so part of all this environmentally friendly, let's make electric cars, and we're going to use 2.2 million tons of water for what's 1 ton of lithium. And how many tons of lithium are we going to need for how many electric cars that they want to roll out?
And I remember listening to an episode that I couldn't do because physical therapy kicked my ass that day. And we were talking about clones, and Ian's head almost exploded when we were going to have slaves as the clones.
I remember
And
that.
now, why is it okay now that because we want these electric vehicles that the U.S. government isn't saying, why is it okay to have these children slaves now? Because we want our electric vehicles, we're going to overlook that little problem right there.
Well, I think I saw something where they found a big lithium deposit here in North America.
Really?
Yes. Think of somewhere out in Utah or something like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's always been lithium pools in like Florida, even I think here in Louisiana. Whenever you had the hot springs at the turn of the century that people used to go to for health spas, all those hot springs are usually around lithium deposits.
Right.
Because the water was naturally high in lithium. People would go and soak in it. They'd feel a little better. That's why bipolar people take lithium. So, you can kind of see wherever there's hot springs, there's usually higher deposits of lithium. But, it's just like when we're looking at this topic, it's frustrating because one of the things that whether Washington or California or anybody else wants to roll out all these things, we live in Louisiana. The weather is bad. It's wet. It's moist. We're basically, you can walk out of your room, walk out of your front door and cut the air half the time. We have a lot of storms. We have a lot of infrastructure problems. I said the 60 hours a year is the average Louisiana loses electricity. What's going to happen? We have hurricanes where we don't have electricity for 3 weeks. And that happens at least every few years here. So when you have everybody's vehicle, when you have all the emergency vehicles that require electricity to keep them going, what's going to happen when you can't get the fire department to come to your place because there's no electricity? Or the police can't come because there's no electricity? Or, it's bad enough when a storm comes here and we have to wait 3 hours in a lineup to get gas. When everybody has to take 8 hours to charge their EV, what's going to happen?
Yeah.
We are going to have a complete and utter society meltdown anytime there's a storm. And when you look at the United States, 2/3 of the United States is subject to very severe weather. And electric vehicles and the batteries don't do well in extreme cold, and they don't do well in extreme heat. So that rules out a big chunk of the United States.
Somebody did this study years ago. I think it was in the late 90s. They did a computer program where they took all of the national major events, hurricanes, tornadoes, blizzards, earthquakes, and everything across America. And there was like about a 3x4 square somewhere that nothing ever hit. Everything else got hit by something every year. And there was just it was like the desk size of this desk that didn't get hit somewhere. Yeah. And so something's going to happen in America to knock this out. And if our power grid can't handle it, what are we going to do?
Yep.
Well, we have, I just want to double check. When I said Utah, it wasn't Utah. The McDermott Caldera, it's an area straddling between Oregon and Nevada, may hold 20 to 40 million metric tons of extractable lithium.
Wow.
Which would make it the largest known lithium deposit in the world.
How many million tons?
20 to 40 million metric tons.
Then just think of that area already has a water shortage. And remember the 2.2 million gallons of water they need to extract every ton of lithium?
They said the caldera was the site of a massive volcanic eruption roughly 16 million years ago.
And that's around hot springs. There we go.
Yep.
There's a tie-in right there.
So
there's a tie right there.
So I know I read somewhere where they discovered a mega deposit
Is that
of lithium.
near like the Rocky Mountains? When I lived in Colorado, the Rocky Mountains went through there, and there was a bunch of hot springs through there. I wonder if
Well,
is it a mountain region
it says
or is it
straddling the border of Oregon and Nevada. So I'm trying to get a picture of the map.
Oregon's not. Oh, Oregon was way up north.
It is.
It is, but so is Nevada.
So is Nevada.
Yeah, the way Nevada sits.
Nevada's really
Okay.
long. It runs kind of parallel to California.
Yeah, it's huge.
You know, and I would like to bring another thing because not everybody is of the same socioeconomic background. Is that one of the big reasons that I've got a problem with EVs, and I think that them getting pushed on Americans is just not right, and in a whole bunch of different ways, is that they're useless for rural and intercity inhabitants. It's only a possibility for people who live in cities and who have a minimal commute, because the average driving commute for somebody that's using an EV is 48 miles. Most of their range is a maximum range of 250 miles right now. So, when you look at that, if you've got somebody that lives, for here, we couldn't drive to Houston. With an EV, you'd have to plan your stops, and and that's not environmentally friendly. If you have to sit on the side of the road for 8 hours to charge your car, or risk doing it in 3 hours but wrecking your battery. But EVs are really only targeted towards people that have a dedicated garage. So again, you have to have a higher socioeconomic status, because if you live in an apartment complex, where are you going to plug in your EV? Because a lot of apartment complexes don't want EVs in covered parking because they have a higher risk of fire. They just spontaneously combust.
Yes. And it's 1 in 20,000 are going to burn up, whereas 1 in 65,000 combustion engines will catch fire. But I have another thing. Is there anybody besides me who's actually been to L.A.?
I have.
Okay, you have. Have you been, Ian?
I'm not.
I've flown in.
You've flown in. Have you ever driven in L.A.?
No.
Have you driven when you were there? Did you actually drive?
No,
you
I was
were
a passenger.
What is the one word that they don't use in any of our research? I have a nice stack. Miranda has all of her written stuff. Jason, as always, has his 6 inches of statistics. What's the one word none of us have seen?
Gridlock.
All of traffic. Okay, so your electric vehicle gets up to 250 miles. If you have a higher end, you might get close to 325. Have you ever sat in 4 hours of traffic in an electric vehicle? How many miles do you think you're going to get?
That's what happened with the forest fire. All the fires in California, people were having to abandon their electric vehicles on the side of the road because, the fires were coming in. They could not charge them. They were running out of electricity. They were running out of energy, and they were having to hitch rides with the people with gas cars to escape with their lives.
Mm-hmm.
So my question is, even with all that happening, it has not stopped them from buying electric
because
vehicles.
California is just its own.
Because it's the same thing as an apple. Once you drink the Kool-Aid, you're going to keep drinking the Kool-Aid. We don't care that child labor is used to make the Apple
blows
phones.
My mind that
we don't care that
people are so gullible.
They are gullible.
I think there's a lot of other things too. I think that people do and don't like the fact that Tesla specifically has like the autopilot function. And I think sometimes when it does work, it does work. And I think that in Los Angeles specifically, I think the more, because Teslas communicate with each other, that I think that like there's a...
That is a really cool feature. That is a really cool feature.
I think that
you'll see that in all sorts of cars coming out.
Yeah. But that's what I'm saying. But I think that's why we're pushing forward. We're pushing this technology forward so that way one day we can have gas or regular vehicles that can have a certain level of technology that can help us out and can make it all safer for all of us.
What would that do for traffic if the vehicles could talk to each other and say, okay, instead of each car taking a second to a second and a half to leave at the light, what if they all just left at the same time?
And I don't
be great.
I don't foresee all of us being forced into buying an electric vehicle.
Everybody in California is.
You're right. But here, let me finish. I believe that if you live in a city, you will be forced to have a some sort of high-tech / electronic vehicle if you're going to reside in the city. But everywhere else in rural America, I don't think they're going to regulate you because I don't see the benefit in it. But if you're going to be in downtown inner city traffic, I think that they're going to help keep everybody safe and help everybody conform, because everybody lives in a city is going to conform in some way. Which is why
California has a lot of rural areas there, and I'm sorry, California is mostly rural.
Here
that's going to require a whole lot of infrastructure changes.
Let's talk about the rural thing, because I have friends in very rural areas, and this is a big problem right now because you look at John Deere. John Deere is a perfect example. This is a company that wants to go green. They want to go woke. They're making all of these big $1 million tractors that they sell, these harvesting machines. And not only are they trying to force these electric vehicles on farmers, and farmers are like, when I harvest, I've got 3 weeks that I've got to harvest every year. And I'm running my tractors 24/7. I can't stop and charge them for 8 to 12 hours a night because we run 24/7. And yet John Deere is forcing these farmers to buy electric vehicles, which now they have to double their fleet of electric vehicles if they stick with John Deere.
There it is right there. There it is.
They have to double their fleet and the other thing that John Deere is doing is they're running everything on subscription services, which we talked about in the car the other day. All these big car companies are trying to piecemeal. If you want to auto start your car, you have to pay extra for that. You want to use your heated seat, you have to have a subscription. And so John Deere is creating these things where you have to subscribe to these policies. You're not allowed to fix your car. Everybody at this table knows how to fix different things on their trucks or on their cars or whatever. We've all done it. When you have an EV, you are not fixing anything because you are contractually prohibited from fixing anything on your vehicle. And so when we've got the rural situation where John Deere is forcing farmers to try to go electric, pay subscriptions, do all this kind of stuff. They have to replace their vehicle every 5 years. There's all these ridiculous requirements, and then farmers can't fix them themselves or pay their
John
friendly
Deere had a
neighborhood
big
mechanic.
lawsuit on them because to work on a John Deere, you had to have their computer to be able to do that, and only a John Deere rep could do that.
All these big farmers are switching to Kubota and all these other brands that are letting Americans be Americans and fix their own shit. And so I think this is a precipice we're at, and I do think electric vehicles are a scam. I think that we've got at least 20 reasons not to go fully electric right now. If you want to have one as a third vehicle and you can afford it, by all means, it's like owning a golf cart. It's fun.
Yes.
If you want to, it's like if you want to live in Peachtree, Georgia, and you have a little golf cart so you can bop around everywhere and just have fun and not have to get in your car. That's great. But can you get on the Atlanta highway in your little golf cart? No way. And I wouldn't. And to me, the quality and the amount of protection that is built into a lot of these electric vehicles, they are little tin can death traps. I did personal injury for 15 years. I see the types of injuries that people have in auto accidents. And when if you're in a little tin can car and you get into an accident versus if you're in a Chevy Silverado, you got two completely different types of injuries you're dealing with. And one you're going to walk away and one you're not.
And I understand what Ian's saying about the rural big city thing, but California passed the law. California is 75% rural. They don't care if you're in a rural area. Period. California, 100%, 20, 30, 35, I'm not sure because of my brain. I can't remember everything right now because I got this stuff going on in there. You can't buy a combustion engine. They don't care if you're in a big city or if you're rural. That's the test. Right there. They're testing it in California to see how much they can get away with in the rest of the country.
Because a lot of those policies end up being adopted by other parts of the United States. So
they'll roll out things in California, like their Prop 65 and different things, because they can roll it out there. And then because of the different American Standards Acts and some of these other things where other states have to kind of match different states' requirements, it has this trickle-down effect. And so if you're a trucker right now and you want to, I wish I had thought of this to call my friend Shay, because she has a trucking company, because she would probably have a lot to say about this. But if you have a trucking, if you have a big rig and you are driving either into California or out of California, you're going to have to meet California guidelines.
Right.
And so all of the products in the United States usually come in on one side of the one port of the country or the other side of the country, and they go across the entire country. And so with California implementing these changes, it means all of the truckers all the way across have to meet those standards and those guidelines in order for them to bring their stuff into California. And what that is going to do to the average cost of goods, I shudder at the thought.
Mm-hmm.
Because this is not done to be environmentally friendly. This is done, every political decision is done to put money in somebody's pocket.
Well, it sounds like when the new Mississippi River Bridge was built.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that was one of our governors who came in before it was already being built, and he came and he lowered the bridge. Up until that point, ocean-going vessels could make it all the way to St. Louis. And then he lowered the bridge to where 10 months out of the year, ocean-going vessels couldn't get underneath it, which forced Baton Rouge and New Orleans to be the ports. Was that what California's doing? To where now they're going to have these big loading docks right inside the border of California, and if you don't meet their standards, you're going to have to unload there, pay California people to move them, just like now, if you want something in
like Teamsters.
And things like that. Now in Louisiana, if you want something to go up the Mississippi, you have to pay Louisiana workers to unload it and put it on barges and go up and down the Mississippi River. I wonder if they're, thinking about something like that.
Well,
now.
they're bleeding people so much because so many people are leaving California because of the tax situation that they're probably trying to be very creative on new ways to create new taxes.
Did you see that? They're saying if you leave, you still have to pay taxes for 10 years. They're trying to pass that law. If you leave California, you're going to have to pay taxes still for 10 years there. Wait, really?
I don't think you can do that.
They were trying to pass. I know you. I don't think you can, but they're trying to pass that law.
Probably a federal lawsuit over that.
Right, that wouldn't. I mean, the federal government have to
they're
step
losing
in on that.
so many people.
Mm-hmm.
So many people.
And they have so much debt piled up in that state. I mean, it's pretty incredible.
So it sounds like, and everyone correct me, I think, Ian, it sounds like you would get an electric vehicle. I don't think Stoney and I would get one.
I think I would if I could afford it and realize that the battery technology, I wouldn't have to pay another $24,000 in 8 to 10 years. If I had to do it maybe in 20 years, I mean, I've been in an electric vehicle. They're fast. Performance, they're pretty cool. But as far as the cost, it's not really saving the environment. They're not really helping.
They get up to about 100 to 130 miles an hour. I think the fastest one I saw was like 230 miles an hour.
But they also do it in 2 seconds.
Yeah, it's quick.
I could be wrong, and I've been trying to find exactly the correct wording of this whole law we're talking about with California. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, it says that California is gearing up to prohibit the sale of new gas-powered vehicles, but that doesn't mean that the entire country is prohibiting the use of them. So if you're going to try and buy a new vehicle in California, you're going to purchase a new electric vehicle, but you can go out of state and still buy
whatever.
Now, I could be in the gray area here of what's going to be, but I think that's what they're trying to move forward with. If you're going to buy a new vehicle in California, you're going to be forced.
Well, that's what we said. If you want to buy one, but that doesn't mean.
But I guess the misconception that I was having was it sounds like you're saying like if I own a gas powered vehicle in California, I can't own it anymore.
No. They're not going to take them away from you. But if you want to buy something, it has to be an EV.
Right.
Exactly.
You won't be able to buy one within the boundaries of California.
And then if you think about it, 20 years after that, and most 75% of gas vehicles, are going to be wrecked or go bad, and you can't buy another one. You got to buy an EV.
I think my next vehicle, I'm seriously probably going to look at a hybrid. Is where I want to go.
Well, we want to know your process when you decide to start buying one. Right here on this podcast, we want to know about your process and what you're thinking about.
So you'll have notes.
Yes, keep notes.
I'm not a super big fan of EVs. I actually am more of a gas powered vehicle kind of person. I enjoy that. I'm a kind of person that if I had the option, but not a lot of vehicles do anymore, I like a standard transmission. I love the connection of driving in a car, in a gas powered car. I enjoy that. I know that I feel like I don't like the idea of being in an autonomous vehicle that's just going to drive for me. I enjoy driving. I want to drive. If I'm going to mess up, it's going to be because I messed up.
Love driving.
So but the thing is, I think you guys are taking or in this episode at least, you've taken a pretty strong stance against it. And I'm trying to be at least open to the idea of it in the future. That I think that there are benefits for it, and I think that it's not all control based. I do think that they're trying to push the mark to try and help us all get better. And I think that in the process, I think the gas powered vehicles are going to get better in the process.
But the government isn't here to make you better. They're not trying to make you better.
I never says the government. I'm talking about companies like Tesla, for instance. That I think that
I agree with
Tesla
that.
has,
I agree
Tesla
with
has
that.
problems.
Yes.
Tesla's not perfect, but I think that Tesla has done a great job of moving this marker forward and making a good electronic vehicle.
That I agree with.
That's what I'm saying.
I think the technology is out there, and I think if you want to use it, bam, go for it.
Right.
Elon Musk, all of his information and all of his technology, he freely gives away. Mm-hmm. He freely gives it away. He doesn't care who uses it. On that, I 100% agree. But for the government to come in and say, you got to do this, there's my problem.
This is not just a California issue. As of May 13th, there are 17 states, New York, Massachusetts, Vermont, Maine, Pennsylvania, Connecticut, Rhode Island, Washington, Oregon, New Jersey, Maryland, Delaware, Colorado, Minnesota, Nevada, Virginia, and New Mexico that have all adopted California's vehicle standards under Section 177.
Interesting.
Oh, wow.
That's what I'm saying. So that's what I'm saying. It's just a matter of time. It's coming. So that's I'm more of a hybrid guy. I like to go down the middle. So
you like the Prius, or is there a different one that you're looking
I will look
Please
to see what it.
Prius.
Dude, hey, have you seen the new Prius though?
I heard they're coming out pretty nice.
The new Prius is super nice.
No, I will when the market. I'll be looking to be buying a new car probably in the next, I would say, 18 to 24 months. Because mine will be, I'm already, I'm getting, it's a long time now. I've had it. But my parents had a hybrid. They loved it. Absolutely loved the car. And the only problem is the battery, because when the battery goes out, it can be quite costly. I'm hoping battery technology will have gotten better.
Yeah.
And I think it has. Mm-hmm. So that's why I'm looking at the hybrid, because I think to me it combines the best of both worlds.
Even in the newer iterations of the Tesla, it's come a long way. Even in the past 3 years, from what I've seen and from what I've heard,
I don't think it's come far enough, though.
I mean, no, I'm not saying it's perfect, but I'm just that's the point that
I'm a believer in trying to work. I'm all about trying to help the environment.
Yes,
because I think we all should care about the environment. Nobody wants to drink polluted water and breathe polluted air and all the other things that make us all sick, and that's just not the way nature meant for us to live.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think we use our brains to make our lives better as mankind has existed on this planet. Yes. So I'm not one of these people that worships nature, and we hold the earth sacred and all that. You can kind of take that to the extreme.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, all human beings are terrible, and everything humans produce are terrible. I think you need to have a synergy of both worlds. Yeah. And that's why I think that use of fossil fuels and electricity is where it's at.
Well, if anybody out there has comments or questions, I'm pretty sure this is another one of those big topics where I feel like people will have something to say. We have a Facebook page /Retrospect Pod, or you can email us with your more lengthy requests, and that is at getoffendedtogether@gmail.com. You can send us an email that way. But until next week, thank you so much for listening. Bye-bye.
Goodbye, everyone. God bless.
Take care.
You're the best. Peace.